That was $400 US a month just for my parking space. Look at this car. There's Fredo. What's up, Fredo?
Hey, what's up?
How you doing this morning, bro?
Morning.
All right, so here we are with Fredo this morning in his beautiful Mercedes-Benz, and we're gonna go do some street photography, right, Fredo?
Yep.
I'm gonna try to keep this camera steady. But before we get there, there's something I want to talk about, which was interesting for me when I moved to Macau, and that was all of the car situation in Macau, or the car game. Let's call it the car game in Macau.
The car game.
The car game in Macau. So I didn't notice it at first when I first moved to Macau, but I rarely or almost never see an old car in Macau. And the reason I have an interesting perspective is because my girlfriend Elise, when she went to the US, she said, there's a lot of weird cars in America. And I was like, what are you talking about? And what she meant was that there's a lot of older cars, there's a lot of big trucks, and that's just not something that you see here in Macau, right? People don't really have old cars that are, that have like been in accidents or that are different colors or things like that, right? So maybe you can give us a little bit of your perspective as to why you think there are so many newer, nicer cars on the road, and tell us about what is it that the government does to kind of encourage that.
I didn't know you were gonna include me in the video.
What do you mean? You're just gonna be driving? You're my driver?
Yeah, I'm just gonna be driving.
No, man, come on. Here you go.
Government forces us to inspect our cars after 8 years of buying them.
So when you do the 8 years inspection, a lot of people don't feel like it's worth it.
Yeah,
right.
The depreciation is very big after a car has been 8 years old, so we tend to sell them when they're 5 years old. And then that's it. But where do the old car go? I don't know. So
you bring up something that's super interesting. If you want to buy a like for me, as an expat that's coming to Macau, if you want to buy a secondhand car, they're actually really cheap if you're getting them in that window that you just mentioned. Like after 5 years,
yes,
you can get a really nice car. And I'm talking about a nicer BMW that's 5 years old. You can get it really cheap compared to the US, because as Fredo said, after 8 years, the government does their checks on the car. It becomes more of a truck, becomes a bigger issue to get it renovated and registered. And people, the local people, just don't want to deal with that. So if you're someone like me and you're coming to Macau, it's easy to pick up a secondhand car that's a little bit over 5 years old.
Yeah, when it's over 5 years old, the car price dropped 75%.
Really?
Just my Hyundai, I got it for 200K. Sold it for 50,000 after 5 years. Right after 5 years.
So all right, so let me just clarify something. You're talking in MOP, which is the local currency, right? Yeah. And if the people back home are watching this, they want to divide by 8 to get US dollars, because that's the currency exchange. 8 MOP is 1 US dollar. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was that's the reason there's so many new cars on the road and you don't see a lot of older cars. The other reason is Macau is going to be the richest country in the world.
It is already.
In 2020.
Yeah.
All right, Fredo says it is, as of today. All right, that's according to Fredo. The Fredo Times has called that, as of today. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was parking, because that was another shock to me, man, when I moved to Macau. All right, so let me tell you what happened to me. I moved to Macau and I rented this apartment, right? And this apartment was 15,000 Hong Kong dollars. and to the people back home, that's about $1,800 US a month in rent. So I'm thinking, all right, this is a pretty pricey apartment. I was living in Nova Park, you know, that's that, right? And I was like, this has to come with a parking space, right? Because the rent is crazy, right? Like, but only a foreigner would think that. So I'm like, I'm gonna get a car, you know, I just moved here, thinking I'm smart, thinking my apartment comes with a parking space.
Probably 2.
Yeah, I didn't know, man. I'm like, that's a lot of dough. It's gotta come with a parking space, right?
Yeah, and a maid.
Yeah, well, it didn't come with that. But I go downstairs to check about my parking, to find out where's my parking.
You actually went to find out?
Yeah, I went downstairs. I'm like, so how do I get a parking space for my apartment? And the guy's like, oh yeah, you can get a parking space. It's like 3,200 mop a month. So I start doing some math in my head. That was $400 US a month just for my parking space. Like, just to park my car every month. No, that $3,200 a month was more than I was paying a month for my car in Las Vegas, okay? That's how crazy that number was in my head to me. So like, after that, I'm like, well, I guess I'm taking the bus from now.
Yeah.
But Fredo, there's one thing that I want to get your perspective on, and that is this thing blew my mind. I'm gonna call it the parking space real estate game, man.
Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but to actually buy a parking space, not rent it, because you can actually physically own the piece of land that the parking space sits on, right?
Yeah.
I've heard that those parking spaces are at least $1 million MOP, which is 125,000 US.
You're wrong. It's more than that.
It's more than that now.
It depends on the location.
Right.
If it's like, if the density is high on that area,
right,
it will be like 2 million, 3 million.
So people have literally gone out and bought 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 parking spaces and become millionaires overnight, right?
Yeah.
US dollar millionaires. Yeah. That's unbelievable to me. I mean, and like, because I feel like a parking space might be worth more than my home back in Las Vegas. I don't know if I want to put that on video, but it's on. So yeah, that was unbelievable to me to learn about how much a parking space was, and like how basically there's like a real estate bubble associated with parking spaces.
Oh, but you know, we only own it for 50 years.
The parking space?
Yeah.
Is that the same for apartments?
Yeah, same. Really? But we don't actually own it for 50 years. Let's say the parking space and the building was built like in 2010. So we only own it for until 2060. For 50 years like that. But if we bought it in 2015, it's still like we own it to 2060. And then we have to pay like some sort of rent for the government.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
All right. So here's another thing about owning a car, since you just got a nice shiny new one. In the US, people will wash their cars, like, especially if you have a home, you'll wash your car in front of your house, you know, you'll pull out the hose and your bucket with soap and you'll wash down your car. I've almost have never seen anyone, I've seen a couple people randomly do it, like in Kalawan.
Yeah.
But people don't really wash their cars here, right?
Yeah, we have the syndrome. We only do it in the first few weeks when we're after buying the car.
No, that's not true.
After that, nah. We just give like in my car park, there's a lady who washed my car.
Okay.
I just pay her like $100 a month, and then she just like, she doesn't hose it, but she would just like wipe it down like every day.
But what I'm trying to get at is, there's not a lot of places. There's not like automatic car washes you can take it through. There's a lot of what I would call back in the US detailing places. So places where you drive it in, they take your car, they clean the outside, they clean the inside, you come pick it up in an hour.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. And as I showed earlier, you keep your car pretty clean. So yeah,
we all have that in Macau as well. Like, in all those casinos, in the car parking casino, it comes with that kind of service.
So one other thing that was kind of interesting to me was the police situation in Macau.
Oh, look, a police.
Yeah, right there. Well, you know, we got some important visitors in Macau.
Oh, look, another two. Another two.
Oh man, they're everywhere today. Speaking of which, man, it's like I said them, and then they popped up. They popped up out of nowhere.
A police car now.
So here's the deal, right? In the U.S., the police situation, let's call it that, not to get too political, but you can get pulled over if you don't turn on your signal, if you have your light is out, if you're going too fast. So I noticed in Macau that there's a lot of like, I've never ever have seen anyone get pulled over by the police. Like the fact that you're driving down the road and the police car comes up behind you, turns on his lights, and you have to move off to the side of the road and they give you a ticket. That doesn't happen in Macau, right?
Very rarely.
Very rarely. So I have yet to see it, and I have been here for over 4.5 years now. But the main way that people get tickets is the cameras, right? Yeah. That or parking tickets. Mm-hmm. And I have a joke with Elise that the Macau government kind of gives like I'm gonna call it a tax refund. I have a joke with Elise that's basically like, that money is for you to pay for your parking tickets and things like that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought it was pretty funny. Oh, one thing that I wanted to talk about, because this is fairly new, I want to talk about the triple plate system. Let me talk about what that means. So for a long time, or at least ever since I got here, you would see cars with 2 license plates, one for Macau and one for China. And that just meant that the car could go into China and come here, obviously, which is pretty straightforward. But now, since they opened the Macau, Hong Kong, Zhuhai Bridge, China Bridge, we're starting to see some cars with 3 license plates, right?
Yeah.
Which is super interesting, because that means that those cars can obviously go to 3 places. But did you know, so I found out yesterday, did you know that if you have a car with 3 license plates, you have to have 3 different types of insurance?
Yeah.
Because apparently part of the bridge, or the major part of the bridge, is actually physically located in China. So they all have to have insurance for all 3 places, which is, I mean, in the US, 1 insurance is more than enough. I can't even imagine having 3 different types of insurances. That would just be crazy.
We're almost there.
Yeah, I think we're coming up. We're coming up on it here. I think after that bridge, we should be there. Oh, so one other thing I wanted to talk about as a foreigner, if I did want to drive, because I have driven in Macau legally. I don't know if we can go this way. If you come to Macau as a foreigner, you can actually get a 6-month, what do they call it? Driver's permit. You can drive for 6 months. You just go to the police station, you show them your, well, I'm from the US, so I show them my license, and they gave me a permit to drive for 6 months. And I heard you can actually do that 2 times. You can actually do it for like a whole year. The thing is, after the 2nd time, you have to take the driving test. So, yeah, apparently you have to take the driving test. You can't just keep getting these 6-month temporary permits, which I find kind of weird, because if you think about it, they're saying, all right, you can drive for 6 months, or even like you can drive another 6 months, but after that you have to take the test.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it feels a little bit backwards, right? Yeah. But apparently that's the way it is. But why don't you tell us about the test a little bit? Because I'm assuming you took the test. I hope.
Nah. Nobody has time for that.
Oh, come on, man.
So the test is simple, but I heard in the States it's even simpler. What we do is like we have like 4 courses, A, B, C, and D, all different. And on the test day, on the exam day, they will just do a draw. Hey, you're on course A, so I have to remember the course A.
So you have to memorize the path.
Yeah.
Right. Then there's 4 different paths, and they just choose one randomly for you.
Correct. And after that, I have to do a parallel parking, and then the other kind of parking as well. Only that, and then. That's it. Okay. It's pretty simple.
All right.
I fell on the first time.
You fell on the... Yeah. So why is that? Because you didn't memorize the...
No. I was driving a stick, and then I have my left foot on the clutch, and then they say like, hey, you're driving dangerously. So like, I asked why. He's like, no, I cannot tell you that. And then on the 3rd time, I didn't know I had my left foot on it. I wasn't stepping on it. And then the dude said like, hey, can you like turn the ignition off and leave the car? And I asked why. Like, oh, you failed the test because you did it 3 times. I'm like,
oh
fuck
man.
you.
I gotta bleep that out now, Fredo. But as you probably noticed, Fredo is sitting on the right-hand side of the car, and so Macau drives on the left, as opposed to the U.S. where they drive on the right. But also in Hong Kong they drive on the right, and in China they drive on the right. So when you're going from Macau to either China or Hong Kong, you have to do what I think they call it a Lotus Bridge or
Yeah,
where you have to basically go from driving on the left to drive it on the right. And that was fairly interesting also when I went from driving here to then going back and driving in the US. It's not that bad, but you do have to be very focused because it's easy to it's easy to forget which side of the road you should be driving on. So that's one thing. One thing I'm curious about, because Macau gets a lot, especially recently, we've had a lot of really strong typhoons.
Yeah.
So I know that a couple years ago we had a really strong typhoon named Hado, and there was a lot of flooding, especially in the older parts of Macau.
In this area right here.
In this area, right? So this area right here, there was probably a meter of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about 3 feet, 4 feet of water where we are right here.
Look at that pole. You see the red thing? It's actually 2 and 2.
Oh, 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5.
That's not.
That was how high.
Oh, the black was 2.5.
The black.
Yeah,
we went to the black one.
Yeah.
Like,
so right now we would be underwater.
Yeah.
Right now. So I learned that a lot of people, because they keep their cars in these underground garages, a lot of people lost their cars.
Yeah.
And actually, when the first really big typhoon hit, unfortunately, what happened was some people tried to run into the garages and get their cars out. And what happens is, because the seawater rises, there's all this rush into the garages, and it's just like a river. It's just impossible to get out. So a couple people did die when they try to go into these underground parkings and try to get their cars out. But what do people in Macau do when they know there's a typhoon coming and they have their cars in these underground garages?
Yeah, we like find a higher place. Just take our car away.
I heard a lot of people will go to Taipa.
Yeah, a lot of people go to Taipa, and some go back to their company. Like if they have the privilege to park their car over there. Oh, luckily my parking space is like on the 3rd floor, so
okay,
fine.
So the other thing is like, if you do lose your car though, what do you do with it?
That I have absolutely no idea.
All right, so that was our Friday morning, because today's a holiday. Today is the 20th anniversary of Macau being returned to China. And we currently have the president of China here in Macau, so certain areas are locked off. We actually wanted to go to the house that I filmed a week ago or so. We wanted to go check out what was inside that abandoned house, but apparently that area is under lockdown, so we weren't able to go. So we went out here, we did some street photography, we ran into some cool stuff today, and I think we're gonna get some good pictures out of it. And so yeah, that's a wrap for today. Thanks, Fredo. Thanks for giving us a ride in your fancy car and spending the morning with us.
Thank you. Thumbs up, whatever they say, like, hey, comment down below, subscribe, whatever.
What do they say? Comment, like, and subscribe. God, it's so cheesy. I hate asking for it. But yeah, please comment, like, and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right, we're out.